I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is UN Insider.
Coming up.
We don't even need to look ahead of how possibly this could get worse. It has already gotten worse.
The UN warns of humanitarian consequences as Israel expands its military operation inside of Gaza.
As we stand at the crossroads of technological transformation and geopolitical uncertainty, the threat of terrorism is more diffuse and complex.
Tracking the threats posed by terror groups like ISIL and looking for effective strategies to stop them. Advancing the SDGs, a conversation with Peru's ambassador. Next.
The Middle East remains at the top of the UN's agenda, with humanitarian conditions in Gaza a key concern. The UN continues to call for additional aid for the Palestinian enclave as growing numbers of people face starvation.
The risk of starvation is everywhere in Gaza. This is a direct result of the Israeli government's policy of blocking humanitarian aid. In the past few weeks, Israeli authorities have only allowed aid to enter in quantities that remain far below what would be required to avert widespread starvation.
Reaching the aid that is available can be a dangerous effort. The UN reports more than 1,800 Palestinians have been killed while seeking food and supplies since May. The UN is also expressing concern about an expansion of Israel's military campaign in Gaza. Israel is calling up 60,000 reservists for the operation focused on Gaza City. Evacuation orders have been issued, and the UN is worried about people displaced numerous times. The international community is growing concerned about Haiti. Gangs control much of the capital, Port-au-Prince, and are extending their control into other areas. More than 1 million people have been displaced by the violence, and the Caribbean nation is one of the countries on Earth facing famine-like conditions. U.S. authorities have announced the indictment and a $5 million reward for Haitian gang leader Jimmy Cherizier. This week marks the International Day of Remembrance for Victims of Terrorism. Terror poses threats to peace and security across the globe. The UN is exploring ways to combat the international challenge.
In recent years, counter-terrorism operations have killed a number of ISIL leaders, including what the US described as the group's global second-in-command and chief of operations in Iraq in March. Despite that, the Security Council heard of the threat the group still poses to international peace and security on Wednesday. At the meeting, members discussed the 21st report of the Secretary-General on the threat posed by ISIL, which said the epicentre of the group's activity is in Africa. It noted that one affiliate group, known as Islamic State West Africa Province, has between 8,000 and 12,000 fighters. Under Secretary-General for Counterterrorism and head of the UN Office of Counterterrorism, Vladimir Voronkov, spoke of ISIL's activities in Africa to Council members during the briefing.
Africa remains significantly affected, currently experiencing the highest intensity of Daesh activity globally. The situation in West Africa and the Sahel remains particularly urgent. During the reporting period, a resurgence in the activity of Islamic State in the Greater Sahara was observed, while Islamic State West Africa Province emerged as a prolific producer of terrorist propaganda and attracted foreign terrorist fighters, primarily from within the region.
During the briefing, Mr. Voronkov also offered Council members suggestions on how they could advance counter-terrorism work. This included taking a prevention-focused approach, saying it is more effective to prevent terrorism than remedy its impact. The Secretary-General's report said ISIL remains active in the Middle East, with up to 3,000 fighters across Iraq and Syria, despite ongoing counter-terrorism operations there. China's Deputy Permanent Representative to the UN told Council members that China has been working hard to help countries affected by terrorism and spoke about its counter-terrorism, or CT, efforts.
China resolutely opposes terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. Over the years, under the Global Security Initiative, China has been helping other developing countries, especially those in Africa, to build their CT capacity through bilateral and multilateral avenues. Through the China UN Peace and Development Trust Fund, we have supported countries in the Sahel with CT operations and financed UNOCT's program office in Kenya.
The United States representative to the UN told the Council it is deeply concerned by the operations and territorial expansions of ISIL and Al-Qaeda, saying the US has intensified its counter-terrorism efforts. Mitch McCann, CGTN, at the United Nations in New York.
From the Security Council to the briefing room, and beyond, Deja is monitoring the latest developments inside the UN. Deja.
Yes, Elaine. Of course, the biggest news this week is the White House meeting on Ukraine. After President Trump's talks with European leaders, including Ukrainian President Zelensky, what does the UN have to say about the outcome?
For him, it's very important that all involved continue to stay actively engaged in what we want to see as an inclusive dialogue to sustain the important momentum that was created to bring an immediate ceasefire and sustainable peace in Ukraine.
Would Secretary General support a peacekeeping mission, no matter it's from the UN or it's from other countries, like what happened in Haiti?
The Secretary General, as we've always said, stands ready to support any meaningful effort to find an end to the conflict in Ukraine.
Now, moving on to other issues. First, the Security Council held an open debate this week on conflict-related sexual violence following the release of the Secretary General's 2024 report. Special Representative Pramila Patten briefed the Council with some grim facts.
In the course of 2024, more than 4,600 cases of conflict-related sexual violence, including as a tactic of war, torture, terror, and political repression, were documented, marking a staggering 25% increase from 2023, which was itself a 50% increase from the previous year.
But there's also something new in this year's report. In previous editions, we saw a list of parties credibly suspected of committing or being responsible for patterns of rape or other forms of sexual violence in conflicts on the Security Council's agenda. But this year, a new category has been introduced. On notice, both Russia and Israel appeared under this section. And why is that?
Why there's this new category here?
Well, I think it was part, the report created this new category because of the consistent denial of access to UN monitors in the context of both the Israeli and occupied Palestinian territory conflict and the temporarily occupied parts of Ukraine. That made it challenging to verify and definitively determine the patterns, the trends, and the systematicity of sexual violence in these contexts.
Then on Wednesday, the Israeli government approved a highly controversial settlement plan for 3,400 housing units in the E1 area of the West Bank. This would severely undermine the territorial contiguity of the occupied Palestinian territory. So what's the UN's reaction?
We stand against all settlement activity in the occupied territories, which we view as illegal under international law and against resolutions. And we condemn the decision taken today on expanding this particular settlement, which, as I've said, both those who are for it and against it agree that it will drive a stake through the heart of the two-state solution.
And finally, something a little different. The block right next to the UN headquarters has been empty for years. We used to joke about the rumors that a casino might be built here. Well, it's no longer just a joke. A real estate developer has submitted an actual casino plan, and a public hearing is scheduled for next week. So does the UN want a casino next door?
As one of the most important residents in the neighborhood, what exactly is the serious UN position on the potential construction of a casino?
Look, that will be a decision taken, I believe, ultimately by the governor of the state of New York. I think it is clear that we do believe that this neighborhood has a certain character, a certain seriousness to it, and we hope that it is preserved.
That's all from me. Back to you, Elaine.
Shudaja, thanks. Let's take a look at some of the other issues on the UN's agenda.
Last year, more than 380 humanitarians were killed. Not dead, killed. The highest ever recorded. Hundreds more wounded, kidnapped, detained.
Passionate remarks from Tom Fletcher, the Undersecretary General for Humanitarian Affairs. UN officials lit candles in honor of fallen aid workers to mark World Humanitarian Day.
The international community, including the United Nations, African Union, and the Intergovernmental Authority on Development, IGAD, have repeatedly called for a cessation of hostilities, de-escalation, and return to dialogue. These calls, however, have not yielded any concrete response.
The UN's Assistant Secretary General for Africa warns the situation in South Sudan is deteriorating. Many fear the world's youngest country could be at risk of returning to an all-out civil war. Negotiators will try again to reach a landmark plastic pollution treaty. Talks in Geneva adjourned last week without an agreement. It's not yet clear when or where the next round of negotiations will take place.
Coming up.
We are aware that the 2030 agenda will greatly alleviate the major problems facing the international community.
UN Insider.
No war, no one again began holding guns. Words protesters.
Were you worried about your life at that particular time?
Not at all.
Excellency, thank you very much for your time. What is your assessment of the state of the continent today?
Africa has the potential to power itself.
Excuse me.
Peru is a founding member of the United Nations. I sat down with the country's UN ambassador, Gustavo Adrianzan. Ambassador, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for coming.
Food insecurity is a big concern for the United Nations, and we know that Peru is a major global food producer. Can you tell us more about the UNDP program for sustainable coffee in Peru and the SDG Fund for quinoa producers?
En el Perú mantenemos una muy sólida relación con el programa.
In Peru, we maintain a very strong relationship with the United Nations Development Program. In fact, we have programs in which we have developed value chains for coffee, cocoa, and quinoa. Through the Ministry of the Environment in regions such as Cajamarca, Loreto, and San Martin, we are bringing farmers together to ensure that coffee and cocoa production is sustainable, environmentally friendly, and, above all, that it involves the participation of Amazonian communities in this work. Something very important is that we have set ourselves the challenge of positioning our coffee as a high-quality, coffee in the world by 2030. But we are also thinking about cocoa, which is now recognized worldwide. And these two products, specifically coffee and cocoa, have made it possible to work on replacing coca leaf crops. Farmers no longer grow coca. Today, they grow coffee and cocoa, which has enabled them to generate significant income and, above all, to be on the right side of the law. But on the other hand, we also have the production of Andean grains. These Andean grains, known as superfoods, such as organic quinoa, which is now sold in almost every supermarket in the United States and around the world, have allowed us to contribute to food security.
You're just 5 years away to 2030. How is Peru doing with its progress with the Sustainable Development Goals, the SDGs?
We are aware that the 2030 agenda will greatly alleviate the major problems facing the international community today. C-Plan is the institution in Peru responsible for the long-term planning of Peru's vision for the future. In this vision for 2050, Peru has taken care to align that vision perfectly with the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We are also strongly committed to expanding our electricity grid to reach the most remote villages. We are also working hard on everything related to gender equality policies. And, of course, we do not overlook the importance we attach to the international climate action. Peru will host the 16th World Forestry Congress in 2027, which reflects the importance that Peru attaches not only to climate change, but also to the conservation of our Amazonian forests, which contribute significantly to this task. On the other hand, let me also say that we are committed to greater social inclusion. In Peru, we would like all social groups to be able to participate actively in decision-making, especially in matters that directly affect the satisfaction of their needs. We are calling on academia, we are calling on the political class, but we are calling on the social groups in general to become involved in decision-making and problem-solving. We believe in a Peru that is more just, more resilient, more equitable, and above all, more united.
Brazil is hosting this year's COP30, and the country's indigenous population is playing a major role in the climate summit. How important is their voice in the fight against climate change, especially in the Amazon region?
First, allow me to congratulate Brazil on its commitment to these important tasks. We in South America share the Amazon with Brazil, and there, the conservation of the forest is a task that has been carried out by our native communities since ancient times. Native communities not only have a history in the Amazonian forest, but they are also responsible for their conservation. That is why we are convinced that any activity related to the Amazon must significantly involve the communities that live there and conserve them. The need we have to interact with the forest, and when necessary, to take advantage of its resources, is a task that presents us with great challenges. On one hand, conservation, but on the other hand, the need for progress. We cannot allow these two situations to be antagonistic. We must make them work harmoniously.
Nosotros creemos además en que
We also believe that we need to think of a more intelligent way to decide on the governance of communities, their forests, conservation, and the contracts that can be made on these lands. We are confident that starting with COP30, the Amazonian countries will be able to find solutions together for the conservation of these forests, on which the economies of these regions also depend to a large extent, in which it is important to be able to exploit.
Ambassador Gustavo Adrianza, thank you for joining us.
Oh, thank you very much. Thank you.
UN Insider.
Whether it's about your education, the home you live in, or the items you buy, your money has a story to tell. Because every business story is a human story. Global Business.
Making sense of the overwhelming wave of information means cutting through the noise to shine a light on the heart of the story and making room for new perspectives. True understanding means the ability to see events from more than one side. I'm Liu Xin, and this is The Point.
Tuesday marked World Humanitarian Day. In Colombia, a musician and humanitarian known for turning a weapon of conflict into an instrument for peace is using his talents to highlight another important cause.
This habitat is called a páramo. It is unique to the northern Andes mountain region and an important part of the network of ecosystems that provide water to the region.
Bogotá depends on the water that comes from the Páramo, located in the entire region of Chingaza National Park and Sumapaz National Park. If that ecosystem is not protected, the life around the park, spanning 3 departments and the most populated city in Colombia, one of the largest cities in the world, will not be viable. Bogotá will not survive. We are talking about 20 million inhabitants who receive their water from there.
But over the decades, the Páramo ecosystems in Colombia, Ecuador, Venezuela, and Peru have continually faced threats from everything like mining projects, agricultural development, and even illegal activities by armed groups. For example, the Páramo of Chingaza looks peaceful, but it has been the setting of clashes between armed guerrillas and military forces, a place which is currently the home to 1,400 species of flora and 531 bird species.
Yo llegué a 3 conclusiones con ese concierto.
I came to 3 conclusions from that concert. The first is that we need to recognize ourselves as part of, and in fact, a result of nature. This human being who feels outside of, above, or at the center of everything needs to set aside that idea. That was the first takeaway. The second was this. I was thinking about how the piano, the wood of the tiple, the cello, all came from trees that once stood here in some moment, and in some way we are reconnecting. And the third thing is this. That place was a site where war took place.
Y lo tercero es, ese sitio fue un sitio por el que pasó la guerra. Ese Sendero Libertad.
The Sendero Libertad was a site where the army passed, where the FARC passed, and it was a very emblematic place to resignify, which could only be achieved through an artistic experience.
Resignificar. Y tenía que ser a través de una experiencia artística que lo lograra.
Colombia's Department of National Parks is working on bringing education and awareness of the country's important yet fragile ecosystems that citizens must protect. For this concert, National Parks partnered with Cesar Lopez, who has been an advocate for nonviolence and peace throughout the country. Perhaps his most eye-catching creation is a guitar made from an AK-47, known as the escopetarra. but his fight for creating an anti-violence movement is a job he does every day. He has held seminars for former guerrillas, worked with at-risk youth, and visited inmates in jail to accompany their rehabilitation process.
Y por último, es una desconexión de ese ser humano con la naturaleza.
I've seen a disconnection between human beings and nature, where humans don't recognize themselves as part of something bigger. Believing instead that humans are the center of the world and that everything is at their service. And they feel that everything from the river, the mountain, has nothing to do with me. So reconnecting with nature is of interest to me. I see that need as I study violent practices in Colombia.
I'm Elaine Reyes at UN headquarters in New York. Thanks for being a UN Insider. I'm Elaine Reyes at the United Nations headquarters in New York, and this is a special edition of UN Insider.
UN Insider serves as an important window for the global audience to better understand multilateral diplomacy.
It's very important for the media to cover the United Nations, to seek to understand and tell the story in ways that the average person in the street can understand.
I think it's very important that the media should contribute to conveying important messages about the reality of today's challenges.
UN Insider has come to the UN, and we at the UN are so grateful to have it here. It is the only dedicated TV program to what is happening in the UN, and it is reaching so many people with, as it says in its title, inside the UN stories.
Media plays an important role in providing objective information across the world.
We think that media has a strong power of uplifting, what we are trying to convey as messages as developing countries.
We need the mobilization of all peoples, of whole government and whole of society, and media can help us to be informed so that we also can make our part.
I think the media is fundamental to enable citizens across the world, first of all, to understand what is the rationale of having the United Nations. It's not that there is one place on planet Earth that will tell the rest of the world what to do. It is a much more complex story.